Welcome to our show, and I want to welcome my special guest. He's been here before, but he's a great guest to have. I hope to have you on a hoverboard. Sheriff Tompkins.
All right.
You've been a sheriff for 2 years of Suffolk County, and it's an honor to welcome you here,
Morris,
to the city of Revere.
It's my honor to be here, sir.
We love you in Revere, by the way.
Thank you.
Before we start, I have a couple of endorsements I would like to read to the people of Revere, and one of them is from our own Mayor, Dan Rizzo, who wrote, "He, Steve Tompkins, is the kind of leader we need as sheriff, and he is a trusted partner in keeping the residents of our city safe." That I agree with him too, sir.
Thank you.
We also have one from the Revere Police, Joe Caparelli, who's the chief of the Revere Police, who's a Marine veteran, by the way.
That's right.
He says, "I worked with him," meaning Steve Tompkins, on several occasions, and I found him to be a true law enforcement professional, and I look forward to working with him in the future. And we do too, so welcome again.
Thank you. So, but you know what, let me just say about that. I think that was so nice of both the mayor and the police chief to endorse my candidacy. And I actually have worked with both of them on a number of occasions, and we've got some initiatives coming up that I'm working pretty intimately with them on. And so that's a great thing, and I'm honored that I've received those endorsements from them. But let me also say this, for the first time ever in Suffolk County Sheriff's Department history, my unions have endorsed me. That happened last week. That's never happened. And so this is a historic event.
Right,
so
congratulations for that too, sir.
Listen, thank you. But you know what? What that says is the things that we're trying to get accomplished at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department and throughout Suffolk County, they're resonating with people. It's working with people. It's working with my labor force, but it's also working with the citizens and the leaders of Revere, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Boston. So I'm pleased about that.
Right. Can I ask you before we start on all these nice things here?
Yep.
I believe you have some of your people, or you yourself, involved with our food bank too?
Involved with your food bank?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's a big thing for us to be involved with the food banks and helping out.
It's a big thing for the veterans, or the widows of veterans, or spouses of veterans.
Yeah.
How did you first get involved with that, if I may ask you?
Well, it was actually in place before I became sheriff. We've always been very high on veterans. I mean, veterans, anyone that's going to go to foreign lands or even domestically and put their life on the line, put life and limb on the line for us, the rest of us, gets our deepest admiration. In fact, each time that we have an academy, when we're bringing in new officers, cadets, we definitely give preference and priority to veterans. We want to get as many veterans into the department as we possibly can, because these are the type of folks that understand what public safety is about. They also understand what community is about, and they also understand looking out for their fellow man and woman.
Right. By the way, Sheriff, you said that you have 5 key initiatives.
Yeah.
That I have here that were given to me.
Yep.
They are. We'll talk about each one individually.
Okay,
so we'll
sure.
take. Let's start with care custody.
Well, care, custody, and control is basically what the taxpayers pay us to do. We're paid to basically safeguard people and property, the communities of Suffolk County. And so if you look at the law enforcement continuum, it's made up of the DAs, the district attorneys, and the police that investigate and arrest. Then you have the courts that adjudicate, and then you have us in corrections. And so once an individual is sentenced to either 2.5 years or less, they are sent to what's called a county facility. And that's where we come in. And on average, people are with us probably about 14 months. So they're going back home. So the question is, how do we work with folks while they're with us so that they go back home in a better state of mind, and so that they don't reoffend? And so that's what care, custody, and control is all about.
The next one I would like to talk about, and people hear this all the time, and a matter of fact, we just had a case where a man was incarcerated for life without parole for killing his girlfriend. Yeah. And I want to talk about domestic violence. Well,
domestic violence is a scourge on our society. Frankly, first of all, you shouldn't put your hands in an aggressive way on anyone. And when you talk about the people that you're supposed to love,
right,
but you hit them, you hurt them, whether it's women, men, children, it just can't happen. And so we talk and have programs that address that issue behind the walls, because we don't want these guys and some of the ladies that we have with us, we don't want them going back out and engaging in domestic violence.
Right, but I got to ask you this question.
Yes.
If the police arrest me for domestic violence,
yeah,
the judge releases me, and then I go and kill my spouse, is there any way that that person can come back at the judge for doing something like that?
Well, there have been cases where that has been attempted. Yeah, sure, but it's a hard, difficult thing to mount. But people have gone after judges for just that type of thing. But you have to seriously have a burden of proof or mount a burden of proof that really speaks to the fact that the judge was incorrect. Yes, was incorrect in their judgment. But yes, it has happened in the past.
Oh, okay. Also, well, one thing I know, you were on before, and you spoke about this very good, about education to prisoners.
Well, there's two parts of education. First, let me talk about the folks and the kids that are not in the criminal justice system. And so we spent a fair amount of time. In 2005, I created a program called the Choice Program, where we send officers into the middle schools and the high schools to talk to kids about public safety. But what we also wanted to do was to have a relationship with a child and an adult in uniform when that child was not in trouble. Oftentimes, when you go in front of an adult in uniform, police uniform, you're probably in trouble,
Right.
or you're close to being in trouble. What we wanted to do is, in a relaxed environment, on their home turf, i.e. being at their schools, you have an interaction between an officer and a child. And so we talk about public safety, we talk about bullying, we talk about internet safety. These things are very important. And we also bring kids into the department, and we have tours for them. And we let them see that this is not a movie, this is not a music video. You don't get to go home at the end of the day. If you commit serious crime, you're going to jail and you're going to lose your liberty. So that's what we do for education before you fall into the system. For those that are in the system, we have 3 tracks of education, Morris. We have the adult literacy track that leads to the GED. We have the special ed track for folks that need special education. And then we place a pretty serious emphasis on vocational education, where we teach folks how to lay a floor, hang a wall, hang a window. It's our experience.
Like a vocational
like a vocational school. What we focus on is carpentry, landscaping, custodial maintenance, painting, printing. Last year we started an urban farming program. This year we're starting a culinary arts program.
That's
and
good.
So what you see here is we're looking for vocations where, okay, so you've been away for a while. Did you learn something? And then we also talk to employers to try to get these guys and these ladies interviews once they transition out. But one of the other pieces of this, we have a program called the Common Ground Institute, and that's where we teach these courses of study. But within the Common Ground Institute, you can also get an OSHA card, an Occupational Safety and Hazards card, which allows you to get jobs, get work, if there are jobs, on federally funded construction sites. And so we have been able to get some of our guys transition out, work on construction sites.
Question for you, Sheriff.
Yep.
If you're a youngster,
Yep.
and you did something, nonviolent crime,
Yeah.
when you get out of the House of Corrections, is your record clean, or that goes with you for the rest of your life?
No. Well, first, when you say youngster,
I'm talking
youngsters,
about 14 or 15.
yeah, they're not with us. They're with the Department of Youth Services.
Okay.
And oftentimes, a lot of times, a child's record will be sealed so that when they come out.
But it's never cleaned, though.
Well, it's sealed and it can be expunged, but it's you got to go through a lot.
Okay.
To get what's called a pardon. But we don't have kids that age in our facility. It's 18 years or older
okay.
in our facility.
So anyone under 18 is in the youth correction
To
system?
DYS, yes, Department of Youth Services. Yeah.
Okay. That was the education part. Now, about the mental health and addiction recovery.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. When you have state budgets and money has been stripped out, particularly in tough budgetary times, money is taken out from all manner of programs that are really crucially needed. But a couple of areas where money has been taken out is for beds, for detox, and mental health. And so what happens is if an individual does something and gets themselves in trouble, it may not necessarily rise to the level of having to be incarcerated, but what often happens is because there's not that many mental health and detox beds, they will get sent to us, sometimes just for 30 days, sometimes for 60 days, sometimes a little bit longer, depending upon their crime. What we're saying is we go up to the State House a lot and we talk to legislators about the fact that there should be more money for mental health and detox beds. There should be more money for detox and mental health resources, and that we have to look at this dynamic, whereas if someone does something wrong and they should be in a drug treatment program versus being incarcerated, let's look at how we make that happen. Morris, it costs $46,000 to incarcerate one person. We have upwards of 1,800 people on a daily basis.
That's over $5 million.
That's a lot of money, right? So what we're looking at is, let's see if we can't get them into a drug treatment program or diversionary program. Now, if they've done something that warrants going to jail, by all means, send them to jail. But if they haven't, let's see if we can't do something else to help them with the illness that they're suffering from.
I'll tell you why I like what you're doing, personally. Because when you teach people to do their own thing, to work, to do construction, they go out and make a living. They make a living, they get paid. They get paid, they pay taxes.
That's right.
The state gets the taxes.
That's
so
right.
it's a reverse thing. Instead of having the state pay for them,
That's right.
they pay for the state.
That's right. And as I mentioned, you and I and everybody, all your viewers, $46,000 a person.
That's a lot of money. Some
Annually.
people don't even earn that a year.
That's right. That's right. So that's a lot of money. So I agree with you. We have to find ways to keep people out of the system.
Right. Thank you for doing that, too.
Okay.
I hope I pronounced this right. My English.
Go ahead. Give it a shot.
Recidivism.
Boom! You got it.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Recidivism?
Oh, yeah. You got it.
I have no idea what it means, but someone told me to ask you about this.
Recidivism is where you get out of jail and you come back. Basically, it's like this circular sort of thing where you get out and come
Revolving
back.
door, you mean?
Correct. And so one of our big initiatives is working on recidivism, to keep people out. Once they get out, stay out. The recidivism rate is 46%, which is incredibly high. We know that...
That's almost 1 out of every 2.
Right. Half the people to get out today will probably be back within 6 months.
And that 3-strike rule still applies, that if you come around the 3rd time, you really get locked up?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
the state recently passed the 3 strikes rule here in the Commonwealth. Yeah.
And what is that, a lifetime sentence?
Well, it depends, but I mean, not necessarily lifetime, but it's pretty aggressive.
Okay.
Where you can go away for a lot of years, a whole lot of years, you see. And so, the state has recently passed that. So we have that here in the Commonwealth.
Before we go into the next subject, we have an American flag here, and we give these to our veterans who have served our country.
Oh, nice.
We'd like to honor you with one as a community veteran for serving our city of Revere.
You know what? I deeply appreciate this, and my father was also in the Army, and...
Can I ask you which war, if I may?
He wasn't in war, actually. He was in during peacetime.
He's still a veteran.
That's right. He was in during peacetime. And so I'm honored to receive this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. It was interesting. We just celebrated Memorial Day.
Right.
And I went to about 4 of the different observances, and it was awesome. It was just awesome, the way we honor the men and women that stand on that wall, as they say, to make sure that the rest of us are safe.
Right. Now I'd like to ask you this question.
Yep.
Central lockup. Can you tell me why that is very important?
Sure. What we're trying to work on in Suffolk County is getting a central lockup. What that means essentially is this. So in Suffolk County, which is made up of Chelsea, Winthrop, Revere, and Boston, each has its own police department. And when they arrest someone, they take them to their district office, district headquarters. And the officer or officers have to do the paperwork and do all that's required of them. And oftentimes they're off the block, or they're not doing their patrols for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, however long it takes them to do their work, to get them booked in, and so on and so forth. What we're looking at is having a central lockup in Suffolk County where, after the officers, just say in Revere, books an offender, they drop them off at the central lockup, and we take it from there. We take care of it. And what I mean by that is we're trained to house offenders. The police departments aren't necessarily trained to do that, although they absolutely know how to do that, but they would have to hold them in their district offices, and sometimes over the weekend. And, particularly if you have a big event where you have to jail a lot of people, it could become, burdensome. And so what we're saying is drop them off to us. The beauty in that, Morris, is this. Oftentimes when folks go to jail, they have to go to hospital runs. They have educational needs. They have all manner of needs. Right on our perimeter, we have all of that. We have education. We have an infirmary. We have everything that they could possibly need. We also have transportation. So if a person has an ailment that is far greater than what we can take care of, we can take them to the hospital. We have officers that will stay with them at the hospital.
And who pays for that? The city, the state?
Well, it's part of our budget.
Oh.
It's part of our budget. And so that comes out of the budget that the state gives us each year. Yeah, And so that's why a central lockup is very important. We have a 4-story building on our premises, so we can house men and women, and we're looking at whether or not we can also house juveniles there. Yeah.
Okay, now what kind of training do the correction officers receive at your?
Oh, they have a full menu of training at the Sheriff's Department. And here's the thing. So when we arrived at the Sheriff's Department, when I say we, I came in with Sheriff Cabral, who's now the Secretary of Public Safety.
Yep.
In 2002, officers were receiving about 12 hours of training each year, okay, which is nowhere near enough.
Right.
They now receive 40 hours of training every year, and it's not just the custody side of the operation, it's everybody in the department receives 40 hours of training, and it speaks to everything that we do as a law enforcement agency, dealing with communities, dealing with offenders, and also we teach how we take care of each other. So how the officers also watch each other's back to make sure that, because sometimes, as we all know, in jail, it can get pretty volatile. And so officers need to be trained properly on how to watch out for each other, how to break up fights between inmates, and how to basically just take care of the facility. That falls under that whole care, custody, and control that we were talking about a moment ago.
Right. Now, are you hiring any new correction officers?
We're actually, we start an academy July 7th. We're going to bring on...
That's my birthday, by the way.
No, sir.
Yes, July 7th.
Really? Well, happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a class of about 43 cadets now. Well, we'll go on in July, and then we're going to have another academy in November. And so, yeah, we often have mostly custody jobs or correction officer jobs, because what happens is a lot of times folks will come to work for us, and then guys and ladies that have been there for 20 or 25 years retire, they cycle out, and we need to backfill.
What are the qualifications, if I may ask you, for a correction officer?
You have to be 21 years of age. We would like you to have some college, but you don't have to be a college graduate, Actually, you don't have to have gone to college at all, but we would like that. We like folks that have we like military experience. Veterans. And we also like folks that have some life experience. And so if you're a little bit older, if you're in your 30s or 40s, you can still apply to our department, In fact, recently we had a gentleman who was 55 years old apply and went through the academy and now is an officer.
So there's no age discrimination then?
No.
That means I could apply to it by age?
Yes. Okay. Now, not sure if you want to, but come on down, Mars.
Okay. I think I'll retire. What kind of programs are offered to inmates? And that is very important, because we talked about the vocational training before.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the basic education. Basic.
Well, we have the basic, we have the adult literacy, where we teach financial literacy. We teach parenting, we teach anger management. Now, here's an interesting thing to tell you about that. So when I first became sheriff, I went over to our education department and I discussed what we were offering the inmate population. And what I found is that although we have anger management classes, and everybody is angry.
Right.
There, we have parenting classes, and most of our folks do have kids. Both of those classes were only being offered once a week for 40 minutes. My thought was, well, if we have these folks who are going to be with us for a little bit, and we have the resources, then we should expand on that. Now we offer both anger management and parenting 3 to 4 times a week, because we feel that we want folks to get their arms around whatever their issues are, so that when they go back into society, they're not as angry, or they can deal with their anger. A lot of the folks that are with us may have gone through the Department of Children and Family, or weren't, adequately parented maybe the way that you and I were, with, to a mom and a dad, or a strong mom or strong dad. And so what we try to do is say, look, this is the best way to take care of your kids, Now, clearly the best way is very subjective, and folks will do what they believe works best for their situation. But we give them the basic understanding of what leads to successful parenting.
Right, but something bothers me today. When I was a young kid, and if I did something wrong, my dad would slap me in the popo, which is my behind.
Right.
Today, if you slap a kid in the popo, they call the police as child abuse.
Yeah.
So spare the rod and spoil the child, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, times have changed. I'm from that school where, if I did something untoward.
You too?
Oh, yeah. But you're right, times have changed. And society is no longer tolerant of that way of kind of disciplining children. And so we have to look at other ways to get the message across to our kids that they have to act appropriately and with respect.
Could you talk a little about the Common Ground Institute?
Well, the Common Ground Institute goes back to the vocational education.
Okay.
And that's that whole piece about carpentry, landscaping.
Oh, the vocational.
That's offered within the Common Ground Institute. Now, here's the thing. On average, the men and women that are with us have a 5th or 6th grade reading and math proficiency level. So some will go to college, most won't. But they all need to earn a wage. And so the question then becomes, how do we do that? And so we place through the Common Ground Institute a heavy emphasis on vocational education, wherein we teach them a skill.
Like carpentry, electricity,
Carpentry,
bricklaying.
landscaping, custodial maintenance, the thing that I talked about urban farming.
Right.
You know, we're starting a retail clothing program next year where we're going to teach folks how to merchandise and sell clothes, but we're also going to teach them how to tailor clothes.
That would be good for the entrepreneur classes.
We also will have an entrepreneurship program that will teach our folks how to be entrepreneurs because, particularly in tough economic times, it's hard for folks that have never gone to jail to get a job. And so when you talk to employers about hiring ex-offenders, they're like, well, you know what, I've only got a few jobs and I'm not going to go with that population. So what we say then, okay, let's teach these folks how to be self-sufficient, and that's through entrepreneurial endeavors. So teach them how to mount their own small businesses and run their own small businesses.
I don't know how it is today, Sheriff Tompkins, but on the applications when you fill out to look for a job, do they put on the application, they could say, have you ever been arrested? You might say yes.
Well, under the new quarry laws, the Governor Patrick struck that down so that you don't have
it's
to
not
put
on
that
there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. The next thing I'd like to talk about is freedom from violence. And we're not talking about domestic violence. We're talking about physical violence or...
Well, we're also talking about anger management. So when you talk about, in fact, that's what our program is called, Freedom from Violence.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do is teach folks, talk to folks about ways in which they can refrain from committing violent acts, you see. And we have several caseworkers that work with us, and each person that's in our department has a caseworker, and we talk about those things because those are crucially important. We have to talk about not getting angry to the point where you cause harm. So that's very important.
Right. Before we mentioned the word about the food banks, but also talking about food sanitation. Could you elaborate on that a little?
Well, that's a program that we have with Bunker Hill Community College, where we teach food preparedness, food safety, food sanitation. So that's one of the programs that we also have in the department. Food services is a place where, if you've gone away, right, if you've been incarcerated for a while, but you know how to cook, you know how to run a kitchen. You know how to clean the kitchen,
right?
You see, you have a shot at getting employed.
So you could teach them how to be a chef there too?
Yes. Yeah.
Very good.
In fact, that's what we're doing in our culinary arts program. And there's a program called NECAT, which is right down the block from us. And so our program is about 10 weeks in length. But what we're talking to NECAT about is once these guys and ladies cycle out of our program, when they're released from the department, cycling into NECAT's program that's 6 months long. NECAT also has relationships with a number of the hotels and the restaurants throughout the city, you see. And so, again, looking at ways in which we can get folks jobs.
Right. Finally, I'd like to talk to you about mandatory sentencing. And the reason I want to ask you about that is there's a case I heard on TV where an intruder broke into a man's house, and the man had his wife and kids, and he felt threatened.
Yeah.
So he pulled out a gun and he fired. But he didn't fire at the intruder. He fired a shot in the wall. And he told the intruder if he doesn't get out of the house, he will be shot.
Right.
The intruder ran out. But he reported that gentleman to the police authorities, and that man was sentenced to 20 years because that was the mandatory sentence for firing the bullet. So...
Well, the first thing I'd be curious about is whether or not the gun was registered.
It was legally.
It was registered?
Yeah, that's what they said. He had it.
And he received a sentence of 20
mandatory
years?
sentence of 20 years.
Because he fired
a bullet.
Well, here's the thing about mandatory sentencing. Mandatory sentencing, I believe, really needs to be looked at and, dare I say, repealed for this reason. Look, if you do something untowards or criminal, and the courts determine that you should go to jail for that, then you should serve your time. But here's the thing. When you have the mandatory sentencing, you are taking out what's called fairness in sentencing.
Right.
You're eliminating that, and that means that the judge, if it's Judge Morris, you have to abide by the mandatory
Exactly.
rules. And so if you as a judge would say, I would give this person a year and a half, but the rules under the mandatory minimum say for this offense they have to get 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, the judge has to go with that.
Right. The reason I brought that up, because let's say, like you say, if he broke into my house and I fired the shot, but not at him, I told him to leave, and I got 20 years. But if I had killed him, I wouldn't have gotten anything, because I could have claimed it was self-defense. He was going to attack my family. So then I agree with what you said. Well, I guess our time is just about up, Sheriff Tompkins. And let me thank you for taking the time to come down to our lovely city.
Yeah, Morris. First of all, I love Everett. I mean,
Revere.
Whoa! Did I? You know what? You know why I'm thinking of it? Because I'm thinking of what's going on with the casinos.
See, this is about Revere.
Right. And I apologize.
No,
but I love Revere, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Boston. I'm really into Suffolk County.
And we love you for coming down here.
We're talking, but let me say this: we're talking to all of the police departments about how we work together as a group to work within Suffolk County. So, pardon me for saying Everett, but that was.
That's all right.
I thought you were going to ask me a question.
Everett
about
is our
casinos.
neighbor, and they're just like us.
There you go.
So God bless you for coming down, Sheriff Tompkins.
Right. Well, thank you for having me on your show.
God bless our troops.
Right.
God bless the people of Revere and the people of Everett. God bless our great country, the United States of America, and thank you for listening. Until the next time, I hope we have another great guest like our Sheriff Tompkins of Suffolk County, and thank you again, sir.
Thank you, sir.